Thank you so much for tuning in. This is our first official video of our CAPS in Penn LGBT Center video series. Again, my name is Malik Muhammad. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I serve as the Associate Director of the Penn LGBT Center.
Hi, I'm Erin Cross. I'm the director of the LGBT Center, and I use she, her, hers pronouns.
I'm Matt Leroy. I'm a staff psychologist, and I use he, him pronouns.
And I'm Britton Davis. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a staff clinician, and both Matt and I are liaisons to the LGBT Center.
Yes, thank you all for being on this video with us today. So we wanted to start with our very first topic of supporting yourself and others through quarantine, right? This time is something that is totally unprecedented, and we are really taking this time to try to figure out what are some ways that we can continue to work through supporting ourselves while also supporting others during this time. And one way, and one thing we really want you to really focus on is prioritizing your own mental health. Knowing that it is a-okay to take a step back and do what you need to do for you, right? We have to know that no matter what you're feeling, no matter what experiences you may be having right now, that they are totally valid. They're valid, and it's okay for you to work through negotiating what having those feelings may be. One thing we have to know is that there's this extreme sense of loss through the COVID-19 pandemic. And as you are working to navigate that, whatever feelings and emotions come up, they are okay and they are valid, right? And another piece of that is thinking through guilt that may come along with some of those feelings you may be having, right? You may be guilty because you are experiencing this in a way that is totally different than someone else. You may be guilty because you feel as though you're prioritizing yourself over others during this time, right? Managing that guilt can be difficult. And Britt, I think you want to share a little bit about what that may look like for folks.
Thanks, Malik. Yeah, so this feeling of guilt is very common anytime that there are natural disasters, pandemics, whenever somebody you know is experiencing something that is very difficult. And the way that we've come to understand it is survivor's guilt, where you might be feeling guilty for being in good health when you see others who aren't, having certain financial or emotional privileges that other people don't have, seeing yourself as having food security when other people are dealing with this pandemic, and food insecurity. These are some examples that can definitely trigger a feeling of guilt. And the other flip side of guilt is empathy. And it is this ability to be able to really empathize for other people who are experiencing the same thing that you are, but that they might have different experiences, and that some of their experiences might make it a little bit more challenging. So trying to honor the guilt that you are feeling, and also recognizing that it stems from empathy, and leaning into the empathy. And, we'll talk a little bit about how you can care for others as well through that empathy.
Yes. Thank you so much, Britt. In thinking about how we manage our guilt, how we're working through the feelings that we may be having, it's important for us to think about developing and maintaining healthy coping mechanisms and healthy coping strategies for us to work through this time. So we're just going to talk through a few that we've found to be helpful for folks, and we hope you find them helpful as well. The first one we really want to focus on is sharing your feelings, right? Just taking that time and energy to share what you are experiencing with others. Just taking that step in the first place, one, allows you to recognize and acknowledge what you're feeling, but then it gives you an outlet of how you can communicate that to folks. And in that communication, you're actively working through it. So taking that time to share some of yourself with others can be so important, especially during times of crisis. We also want you to think about potentially just taking breaks from the news, from social media, any media outlets, like just taking that step back and closing off yourself from some of that sometimes can be so helpful. Because so many things are being tossed at us in various different ways, it can be very overwhelming. So it's okay to just take a break from it all for a moment, even if it's just for a few hours. Whatever you need to do for yourself to take that break, can be so, so helpful. It's okay to be overwhelmed, and it's okay to set that boundary for yourself in that way. Britt, do you have a few more that we may want to think through?
That's a perfect segue, Malik. I like to think about possibly throw two out there and see if they resonate with any of you. One being setting boundaries. So recognizing that we have a fuel tank of our own emotional, physical, mental well-being. And anytime we're caring for other people, we're also taking away care for ourselves. And we're not aiming to strive for any sort of perfect balance. I know that perfection is something that we probably all struggle with a little bit at Penn, but recognizing that we can care for other people, but we also need to care for ourselves. So doing whatever you need to do to care for yourself during this time, and recognizing that, of course, that comes with limitations and comes with certain privileges, which we'll talk about in other series. But do carve out some time and space for you to do things that will be restorative and recharging. And that brings me to my second thing to throw out there. And this one will feel like a bigger leap during this time, but that is trying to find joy and recognizing the full range of emotions. So we don't need to stay in grief and guilt and sadness, although those feelings are valid, like Malik said, and very real. We can also experience the other end of the spectrum, which is joy, connection, happiness, and finding things that do bring you a sense of connection, whether that's FaceTiming, Zoom calls, WhatsApp. I forget all of the lingo and options that are out there, but finding any way that you can connect with friends, family of choice, staff, at the LGBT Center. Anything that you can do to bring you some joy and happiness and connection during this time is very important.
Yes, thank you so much, Britt. And it sounds like a lot of what you're talking through is like finding a sense of control for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
During this time, it's so easy to feel like so much is out of our control because things are happening outside of our scope, right? So really just taking that sense of finding what sense of control you have for yourself, the things that you can take ownership of, the connections that you can continue to cultivate and facilitate is so, so important. So do what you need to find that sense of control for yourself. So those are all the strategies that we wanted to talk through today for our first topic of supporting yourself and others through quarantine. Again, we hope to continue our series with other riveting topics that we'll be bringing in. If you have any suggestions or things that you want to talk through at all, feel free to leave them in the comments, shoot us an email, get in touch with us in some way. We're always looking for ways that we can support you all in any way possible. So thank you so much for tuning in. We hope to see you again in more of our videos. Have a good one.